Good evening, you are watching Korean News in English. I am Sona Tumanyan. Tonight we look at life after the struggle. 5 years have passed since the devastating 44-day war. This week, international focus is squarely on the region with NATO's Rose to Rose seminar in Armenia and crucial discussions at the UN. Meanwhile, there is a progress on the diplomatic front as the country moves closer to visa liberalization. Let's begin our weekly wrap-up with tonight's top headlines. The lingering shadow of the 44-day war, the pain that remains, and a first-hand look at a homeland lost. Stunning irony at the United Nations, President Aliyev discusses peace after the 44-day war he himself unleashed. NATO's Rose to Rose seminar in Yerevan, delegations from Turkey and Azerbaijan also in attendance. On the path to the European Union, an interview with the head of migration and citizenship about the politics behind the process. Armenia holds strategic advantage in context of EU-Georgia relations, expert claims. Last Sunday, a flood of congratulatory messages poured into Armenia for its Independence Day from world leaders in the US, Russia, and beyond. This week, a heavy silence marks a grim anniversary. On September 27, the 5th year of the war started is being mourned. It was on this day at 7:10 a.m. that the nation woke up to a nightmare. News of a catastrophe ripped across the internet. Azerbaijan had launched a full-scale assault along the entire line of contact with Nagorno-Karabakh, igniting the brutal 44-day war. For 44 agonizing days, multiple attempts to broker a ceasefire were shattered by renewed Azerbaijani offensives. The conflict was finally halted by a trilateral statement signed on November 9th. Brokered by Moscow, the deal cemented Russia's role as the conflict's primary arbiter and etched the names of Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Russia into another chapter of the region's history. But for Armenians, it was a declaration of devastating loss. 7 districts, along with the historic cities of Shushi and Hadrut, were ceded to Azerbaijani control. What followed was a campaign of ethnic cleansing, a war crime that many say was never called by its name. The aggressor was never called the aggressor. The tragedy, however, was far from over. 3 years later, after a crippling 10-month blockade that starved the population, Azerbaijan launched a final devastating assault on September 19th. The aggression made the safe existence of the Armenian population impossible. The people of Artsakh, who had endured 4 wars, were forced to flee. In a matter of days, a torrent of more than 100,000 refugees poured into Armenia, leaving their ancestral homes behind. Nagorno-Karabakh was emptied of its Armenians. In the aftermath, Azerbaijani forces arrested the region's entire military and political leadership, sealing its fate. What happened after the war can only be described as ethnic cleansing. It's a story of unimaginable loss, told tonight through the eyes of my colleague Mary Danielyan, who was forced to flee. She left behind a haunted symbol of her desperate hope, a cross, tucked behind a stone in her homeland of Artsakh, waiting for the day she might finally come home.
On September 24, 2023, the residents of border villages and towns in Artsakh were displaced. Having barely escaped, without even time to grab the most essential items, they had found refuge in the area of the airport, 10 kilometers from Stepanakert, at the base of the Russian peacekeepers. That day, the Great Displacement began, which lasted until the beginning of October.
On
September 25, it was my turn. I had already packed the most important things into the trunk of the car, although in those hours, everything I looked at seemed important. With a strange calmness, I left the house, without a single tear. I locked the door with special care and kept the key with me. The car parked in front of the garage was supposed to take us over the Hakkari Bridge, but it would be a one-way trip. for the last time. The realization that I was leaving my home for the last time, however, was not yet there, just as it wasn't when we left our village in 2020. Do you know when it hit me? When I simply looked up at our apartment on the 5th floor. We hadn't even left Stepanakert yet when we became a small part of an endless convoy of cars. We stood in the same spot for hours. There were moments we moved forward only by centimeters. The only positive side of the queue was that it prolonged the feeling of being at home. This was the longest journey of my life and a continuation of the hellish reality of those days.
Մարդիկ մահանում էին գաղթի ճանապարհին։
People were dying on the road of the Exodus, and we had to somehow clear a path for them. We wanted to reach Hakkari, once the road of life, now what seemed like the bridge of salvation, as quickly as possible. Yet we didn't want to, because we didn't know what awaited us there, and worse, what came after. Whispers circulated that the Azerbaijanis were inspecting the cars very meticulously, and that even discovering a cross inside could cause problems. People began to systematically neutralize these so-called forbidden items. I took it off, the cross, with great pain. I placed it behind a large stone, thinking that maybe one day I'd be lucky enough to go back for it.
Գնամ հետևից։ Ճանապարհին խոսում էին, թե Ստեփանակերտ Ասկերան
On the
ավտոճանապարհը
road, people were saying there had been an explosion at a fuel depot near the Stepanakert-Eskeron highway, but due to the complete lack of phone service, we couldn't get any news. We didn't know the situation, we had no information about our friends or strangers who remained there. We couldn't even begin to imagine the scale of this man-made disaster.
ու սկսվեց Ստեփանակերտ շտապող ուղղաթիռ։
And so began the procession of helicopters and ambulances rushing towards Stepanakert. With every passing vehicle and helicopter, we began to grasp the scale of the tragedy.
Տնից դուրս գալուց 37 ժամ անց Հակարի
37 hours after leaving home, we were at Hakkari. They checked us, we passed. Young volunteers from Goris immediately approached the cars, bringing food and hot tea to the cold, tired people who had lost almost everything and were supposedly saved. The queue wasn't over. It continued at the Goris municipality, where they were registering the data of us, the forcibly displaced. The next and final station was Yerevan. On September 26th, the flow of cars coming from Artsakh to Mother Armenia was even greater. According to data from that evening, more than 28,000 people had been forcibly left the territory of the Republic of Artsakh. The hardships were unbearable. People spent days on a journey that should have only taken 2 hours, sleeping in their cars. The displacement continued until October 3. According to the investigative committee, 64 people died on the road of the Exodus alone. More than 100,000 people were forcibly displaced and ethnically cleansed from the Republic of Artsakh. By Mary Danielian, ReOpen Media.
Against the backdrop of a fragile peace process, Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev took to the world stage at the UN General Assembly to deliver a speech that was nothing short of infamous. While the full scope of the assembly will be analyzed later, Aliyev's remarks demand immediate attention. Far from shying away from the war he unleashed 5 years ago, Aliyev framed its consequences as a triumph for his agenda, speaking from what he clearly considers a winning position. He asserted that Azerbaijan had put forward 5 fundamental principles based on international law and presented a draft peace treaty. Then came the victory declaration, quoting Aliyev directly. Then, on our initiative, the negotiation process on the text of the draft began, which lasted from October 2022 until the summer of 2025. Despite various provocations, the negotiations yielded positive results because they were conducted exclusively on a bilateral basis without any external interference. The principles of territorial integrity, sovereignty, and mutual respect has suggested are now waving like a white flag over the region, heralding a new era of peace since the August 8 agreement. Recalling the Washington summit, Aliyev highlighted one of its key outcomes, the Trump trip, a project he says will ensure unhindered passage through the so-called Zangezur corridor and bolster regional connectivity. Now let's shift our focus from the UN back to Yerevan and turn our attention towards NATO, more specifically to the Rose-Roth Seminar. The 108th Rose-Roth Seminar of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly has launched in Yerevan. Delegations from Azerbaijan and Turkey were also in Yerevan to participate in the seminar. One of them was a man named Murad Muradov, representing an Azerbaijani think tank, who spoke about protecting the South Caucasus from destructive influences in a very rapidly changing world. He also interacted with journalists. Of course, in the current political climate, the words of the Azerbaijani delegate could not be taken at face value. They contained subtexts and clear messages. Incidentally, one of his remarks is published on the website of the National Assembly of Armenia, and I quote him: "It is necessary for the countries of the small region to have a permanent format so that heads of state, governments, and other officials can constantly consult and reach joint positions, taking into account each other's core mutual interests and concerns to protect the South Caucasus from destructive influences in a very rapidly changing world." When drawing conclusions, the primary concern, of course, is the issue of not returning the matter of the people of Artsakh to the agenda. After all, the OSCE Minsk group is defunct, the Red Cross is blocked, and now it seems the next step is to neutralize any potential international actors in this matter or eliminate their desire to intervene. And the vectors for this are aimed squarely at the Russia and France.
The 108th Rose-Roth Seminar of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly has launched in Yerevan. At the core of the discussions is the theme, Armenia and the South Caucasus in a Changing World, Strengthening Democracy and Regional Security. National Assembly NA Deputy Speaker Ruben Rubinian referred to the document signed in the United States on August 8th, noting that the declaration emphasizes the necessity of opening communications for the sake of peace, stability, and prosperity.
Today we have a historic opportunity to overcome the conflict of the past and build a peaceful and good neighborly future. It is our duty not to lose this opportunity and to turn it into a historical reality of stability and development. We hope that Turkey will respond to our readiness to establish diplomatic relations and have open borders as soon as possible.
Anjanik Kotarian, head of the Armenian parliamentary delegation to the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, stressed that this document has opened a new page in the history of the South Caucasus, and the principles for establishing peace and interstate relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan have been enshrined.
The process of establishing peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan is a priority not only for national and regional security, but also for global security. We believe it is possible to achieve lasting peace based on the principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, inviolability of borders, jurisdiction, and reciprocity.
Responding to a question about Azerbaijan's demands regarding changes to Armenia's constitution, Anjanik Kocharian said that such an issue is not being discussed on this platform. Turkish and Azerbaijani officials are also participating in the assembly. The Azerbaijani delegate stated that there are no territorial claims from their side. However, Armenia has territorial territorial claims in its declaration of independence, and this is the only obstacle to signing the peace treaty. Regarding the fabricated term Western Azerbaijan, Muradov said that it is more about cultural heritage. Of course, the representative from Baku did not mention that Armenians had cultural and not only cultural heritage in Artsakh.
There are no territorial claims left.
It is important for Baku that these claims are annulled. That is the only thing that creates potential legal grounds, which at this moment is an obstacle to signing the peace agreement.
Turkey, Armenia, and Azerbaijan are neighbors and have opened a new page in the normalization of relations. This was the statement from the representative of the Turkish delegation.
We are really happy to see talks are going between Azerbaijan and Armenia. I mean, good relations. We are neighbors. So good relations between Azerbaijan, Turkey, Armenia, and in all South Caucasus actually will help both countries. I mean, no one wins from the fight. Everyone, there is benefit from peace for everyone.
Noted that it does not imply a territorial claim from Azerbaijan and Turkey. During the seminar, Armenian Minister of Defense Suren Papakin emphasized that the Defense Department receives specialized advisory support from France and the U.S. on a permanent basis, and Greece also provides coordinated support in a number of areas.
At this stage, the primary efforts in that direction are focused on developing strategic documents with new models and standards, modernizing the structure and management system of the armed forces, developing educational and training capabilities, and other areas.
Addressing the question of whether the director of Armenia's National Security Service, NSS, had a meeting and discussion in Baku regarding the return of Armenian prisoners, Secretary of the Security Council, Armen Grigorian, stated that the NSS will release relevant information if necessary. Mary Danielian, ReOpen Media.
In a move that signals a stunning and unprecedented shift in regional diplomacy, the director of Armenia's National Security Service traveled to Baku for the first time this week. The timing was no coincidence. His trip occurred precisely as an Azerbaijani delegation was on Armenian soil, participating in the NATO-linked Rose-Roth seminar in Yerevan. So, what is this forum that has become the backdrop for such high-stakes maneuvers? The Rose-Roth seminar is NATO's flagship bridge-building initiative, born from the ashes of the Cold War. Launched in 1990, its purpose has always been to foster dialogue and prevent the very misunderstandings that fuel conflict, connecting former Soviet bloc nations with the Western alliance. But the spirit of a dialogue has a fraught history in the Caucasus. The same seminar became a flashpoint of controversy back in 2004 when it was held in Baku. Armenia was forced to boycott the event after Azerbaijan refused to provide basic security guarantees for its delegation amid a storm of public protest. Today, as Armenia hosts the very event it was once effectively buried from its long journey as a partner in the NATO Parliamentary Assembly since 2002, enters a new, complex and uncertain chapter. And now turning to a major political shake-up from this past week. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan's ruling Civil Contract Party has unveiled a bombshell declaration, a strategic roadmap that could redefine Armenia's future. At a high-profile party congress, Pashinyan announced a radical new vision to dissolve the current Third Republic and forge a new Fourth Republic in its place. At the heart of this strategic reboot is a clear and ambitious goal, formally activating efforts for Armenia to join the European Union, while framed as a balanced foreign policy move not aimed against any regional actor. The message is unmistakable. But this historic pivot to the West is no simple task. The declaration, which will serve as a party's platform for the 2026 elections, acknowledges the long road ahead. Joining the EU is not a one-year project. It's a monumental undertaking that requires a complete overhaul of Armenia's institutions. Everything from its justice system to its social laws must be brought in line with strict European standards. A crucial first step on that path is visa liberalization, a process Armenia kicked off a year ago. But as many nations have learned, visa-free travel to Europe comes with a price. Imagine the steep cost of a similar deal with the United States. In its own region, Armenia faces a complex geopolitical chessboard with rivals watching its every move. To break down the political subtext and the immense challenges that lie ahead on this road to Europe, I sat down with Nelly Davtyan, the head of Armenia's Migration and Citizenship Service.
Ամեն դեպքում, երբ խոսվեց
When the topic of visa liberalization was discussed, the public already had the perception that the coveted visa stamp would no longer be a requirement. For example, Moldova, if I'm not mistaken, achieved visa liberalization in 4 years. For us, what timelines do you envision as most likely? I know this question has been asked many times, but it is likely what interests the general public the most.
Look, in reality, only 8 states have gone down this path, which means the comparable global experience we can be guided by when making predictions is very limited. However, it's a difficult comparison because the Republic of Armenia's starting point is not comparable to any of those 8 states. The Balkan states, for instance, typically already had a biometric system in place at the start of their visa liberalization negotiations, and if I'm not mistaken, Georgia did too. The content of the action plan is similar in many respects, but it also has very major differences for different states. In other words, there are roughly the same 4 areas that need to be brought into line with European Union standards to qualify for a visa-free regime. I want to emphasize that we have already started working on many points where our state was weak, or where infrastructure was completely lacking, not at the start of visa liberalization talks, but because we perceived it as a natural path for our sectoral development in many different areas. In the sector I'm responsible for, I must say that since 2022, we have been working very actively on the implementation of the biometric system, and that goal is now very close. If, for example, we had started this work only after receiving the action plan, it would have taken 3 years just to complete this phase alone. So I won't give a specific number of years, but I will make one important point. My subjective assessment is this. The action plan we will receive is, above all, a roadmap with clear, mandatory components for our state's most important sectors. This has significant added value, perhaps even more than the visa-free regime itself. Of course, the final and desired result is to have a visa-free regime, but we must recognize the other important values we are acquiring along this path. To describe it more figuratively, in many situations we note that our infrastructure is old, processes are inefficient, and management systems are flawed. Plans to reform an entire sector can sound very ambitious. Often they take the form of a legal act, but during processes like interagency review, they can be altered, lose their initial intent, or fail to achieve the desired result on the ground due to a lack of capacity, funding, or resources. But the action plan is a document that obliges our state to achieve a result that is acceptable to the European Union, and we should welcome this mandatory component. These are high international standards, and in fact, whether we want to or not, we will have to carry out a series of reforms that will ultimately only benefit our state.
Before moving on to the mandatory blocks, you mentioned there are 4 of them. A little while ago, Ms. Davtyan, you also talked about the Balkan countries. If we consider their example after becoming EU members and after visa liberalization, about 2 million people have emigrated from the 3 countries combined. I'd like to ask you directly about your preliminary scenarios or considerations regarding emigration. Do you have any specific numbers or do you foresee any particular scenario? I understand we're talking about being in Schengen zone for 90 days and every 180-day period, but have you calculated these risks?
This is one of our biggest challenges. You are right to say that the situation could change dramatically given our state's already unfavorable migration picture. It is no secret that for decades since independence, we have been considered a country of emigration, and the term is very relevant in our media and daily lives. Although the meaning of the word has shifted, nowadays leaving one's country of permanent residence for another, even for permanent residents, does not necessarily have a component of forced migration. In other words, it is not a forced movement. It is a choice, very often based on the desire for a more prosperous life. This is a choice made in the exercise of a right, and the individual bears the consequences. However, we were also witnessing another situation where the liberalized visa regime is now at threat in our neighboring country. In this respect, the experience of Georgia is very instructive, where the number of asylum seekers more than doubled in the year following visa liberalization.
We face this risk as well, and perhaps the risk is even higher in our state. While our number of asylum seekers in all EU member states typically reaches 4,000 to 5,000 a year, only 2020 was an exception due to pandemic restrictions, when the number did not exceed 2,000. The preliminary estimate for the last year, 2024, is close to 6,000. Therefore, we must be in a position to contain this indicator under a liberalized visa regime. Obviously, migration is a multidisciplinary field. It is not possible for our department, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, to adopt legal acts that would prevent migration. That is not how it works. In other words, it is not possible to simply close the borders or to prohibit certain groups from leaving the country. The right to free movement is a fundamental right.
During one of his recent press conferences, Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan clearly stated that yes, we want to become a member of the EU. According to his vision, in about 20 years, we will be a member of the European Union. Ms. Davtyan, in your opinion, what political process does visa liberalization imply in this context, or does it have a political subtext for Armenia?
This is a common question for all states going through the path of visa liberalization. Is this more of a political or a technical issue? You see, the action plan will essentially be a series of technical measures. The task is very simple: carry out the specified actions to get a visa-free regime. Where is the political component? If the plan requires us to have biometric passports, we announce a tender and introduce them. Or take integrated border management, another major area that will be a key component of the action plan. Is it bad that we will have integrated border management? As I've said in my speeches, states invest heavily in border management because of its importance. Currently, our state does not have this infrastructure. Is there a political component here? On the contrary, it seems our European partners are showing us how to build modern infrastructure. However, the process of reaching this point, the start of the visa liberalization dialogue, was indeed political. We can make a conditional distinction here. The negotiations up to this point have been political. In other words, the European Union has made the commitment that it is ready to have a visa-free regime with our state. This, of course, can be interpreted as a political process, as it is about bilateral commitments. Within my competence, that is all I can say.
The path to European Union membership in the South Caucasus has hit a dramatic fork in the road. While neighboring Georgia, an official EU candidate, has put its ambitions on ice, Armenia appears to be accelerating its own Western integration, raising complex questions about regional rivalries and the future of EU influence in a pivotal region. On November 28, 2024, the Georgian government announced it was suspending EU accession talks until 2028 and would refuse all budgetary grants from the bloc. The move triggered a sharp response from Western partners, who accused Tbilisi of democratic backsliding and urged an immediate return to its European trajectory. This pivot has major implications for Armenia, which has expressed its own clear interest in EU membership. But does this create an unintended rivalry? As Armenia seeks an EU mandate in the Caucasus, does it become an indirect competitor to Georgia, particularly at a time when bilateral relations are already strained? For its part, the EU has shown no intention of disengaging from Armenia. The EU's monitoring mission continues its work on the ground, and the Washington summit did not alter this vector. Instead, the focus has shifted squarely to tangible progress with visa liberalization, a key step on the path to EU integration, now in an active work phase a year after negotiations concluded. A recent visit to Brussels by Armenian Minister of Internal Affairs Arpine Sargsyan from June 10 to 12 specifically addressed this issue. The meetings resulted in an agreement for an EU expert delegation to visit Armenia to advance the visa-free program backed by short and medium-term projects with a combined budget of around 7 million euros. This flurry of activity inevitably raises the ultimate strategic question for Yerevan: the choice between the EU and the Russia-led Eurasian Economic Union. Armenia's cooperation with the EAEU is already a decade old, but the road to full membership to EU could stretch for another 10 years. or perhaps not. As the situation develops, a comment from a Georgian expert obtained by our colleagues suggests a striking reversal of fortunes. From his perspective, it is now Armenia that finds itself in a more favorable position to build its relationship with Brussels.
Armenia has one major advantage that Georgia did not have, and many others don't either. On this path, it has a very loyal and strong partner in the European Union, France. When you have a lobbyist like that, such countries can take on a great deal of responsibility and make a significant contribution to persuading other nations. For example, on the issue of granting Georgia candidate status, which we fundamentally deserved as we had met the criteria and requirements set by the EU, the German government and Olaf Scholz personally played a very large role. At the time, according to my information, the French authorities and others were opposed to this and were not inclined to support it. A lot is changing in this period, which is why the France factor is also very important on the path toward the European Union, in my opinion. And within France, the issue of supporting Armenia practically transcends partisan politics. In principle, there is a consensus on this matter among all the main political forces.
And finally, short news purely for the sake of extravagance. It's not just delegates from Azerbaijan and Turkey visiting. Armenia is also preparing for a royal visit. Queen Mathilde of Belgium is set to arrive from October 13th to the 15th, where she will meet with university students, visit the famous Tuma Center, and tour the Kararkunik region. And coming up in the second half of the show.
Chaos at the General Assembly. Trump's self-prize meets a broken escalator as Macron gets stuck in New York City traffic. A push to recognize Palestine at the UN while Trump rules out annexation. Fireworks in sports. Two-time world champion Malha Samoyan's triumph, and the Golden Ball has a new owner. And your next upgrade is here. The iPhone 17 officially hits the market.
And now, as I promised at the top of the broadcast, let's journey to the center of the world, New York City. For the past week, it was the epicenter of global power, the grand stage for the most high-stake declarations and fear pronouncements. We're talking, of course, about the United Nations. Marking a pivotal 18th anniversary, the United Nations General Assembly is gathering world leaders to reignite global cooperation on peace, human rights, and the world's lagging sustainable development goals. Under the theme Better Together, the high-level week starting from September 20 to 26 was full of emotions. And not only emotions. But before getting to the main topic, let's talk about the amusing incidents from this high-profile event. For example, Francis Macron calls Trump after being blocked by the US president's motorcade route during the United Nations General Assembly. Macron was able to cross eventually after walking for about 30 minutes.
How are you? Guess what? I'm waiting the street because everything is frozen for you.
Are you sorry?
I don't know, it's still 3 or 4 in the afternoon. But I would love if we can. Yeah, I know, I will follow. But you know, after I would love if we can have a short discussion with Qatar and you on the situation in Gaza, because we were.
Meanwhile, Trump talks about his good physical fitness and the malfunctioning teleprompter. He greets the First Lady Melania Trump and continues his nearly hour-long speech. In a speech that led his worldview bearer, President Donald Trump delivered a scathing rebuke of global institutions and European policy at the United Nations today. After praising his own administration, Trump turned his sights on Europe, declaring the continent is in serious trouble. They have been invaded by a force of illegal aliens like nobody has ever seen before, Trump warned, adding that Europe's suicidal energy ideas combined with immigration create a double-tailed monster that is destroying its heritage. He dismissed climate change as the greatest con job ever, drawing gasps from the audience. Trump then targeted his hosts, calling the UN ineffective and accusing it of writing strongly worded letters with empty words that failed to end wars. He even attacked the organization for aiding asylum seekers, claiming the UN is supposed to stop invasions, not create them. Coming up, the highlights from Trump's long-winded address.
And I don't mind making this speech without a teleprompter, because the teleprompter is not working. I feel very happy to be up here with you nevertheless, and that way you speak more from the heart. I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble.
That's how U.S. President Donald Trump kicked off his speech at the UN General Assembly, but his complaints didn't stop with the faulty prompter. According to him, the renovations of his office were also expensive and of poor quality, and he was even set off by a broken escalator.
If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen, but she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood.
The president's nearly hour-long address centered on a prosperous America and, in his view, a world prospering thanks to it.
On the world stage, America is respected again like it has never been respected before. You think about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, or 1 year ago, we were a laughingstock all over the world.
Trump, casting himself as a peacemaker, reminded the audience that he stopped 7 wars without the UN's help and is deserving of the coveted Nobel Peace Prize.
Likewise, in a period of just 7 months, I have ended 7 unendable wars. They said they were unendable. You're never going to get them solved. Some were going for 31 years, 2 of them, 31, think of it, 31 years. One was 36 years. One was 28 years. It's too bad that I had to do these things instead of the United Nations doing them. And sadly, in all cases, the United Nations did not even try to help in any of them.
It's worth noting that one of the 7 wars Trump claimed to have stopped was between Egypt and Ethiopia. In reality, the last military conflict between them occurred in the 18th century. Their current dispute is over a dam Ethiopia built on the Nile River.
To think that we settled Azerbaijan and Albania as an example.
I would like to apologize very quickly. I stand corrected. Azerbaijan is actually pronounced Azerbaijan. And Armenia is pronounced Albania.
Trump then turned to the war in Ukraine, claiming that if he had been president at the time, the invasion would never have happened.
I've also been working relentlessly, stopping the killing in Ukraine. I thought that would be, of the 7 wars that I stopped, I thought that would be the easiest because of my relationship with President Putin, which had always been a good one. I thought that was going to be the easiest one. But you know, in war, you never know what's going to happen. There are always lots of surprises, both good and bad. Everyone thought Russia would win this war in 3 days, but it didn't work out that way. It was supposed to be just a quick little skirmish. It's not making Russia look good. It's making them look bad.
Trump didn't miss the opportunity to use the UN stage to once again issue a stark warning to migrants, dedicating a significant portion of his speech to them.
Our message is very simple. If you come illegally into the United States, you're going to jail, or you're going back to where you came from, or perhaps even further than that. You know what that means.
The U.S. president also had some pointed advice for European leaders. Keep your borders closed and beware of migrants who, he claims, are destroying your culture and heritage.
Every single one of them, you're destroying your countries. They're being destroyed. Europe is in serious trouble. They've been invaded by a force of illegal aliens like nobody's ever seen before. Illegal aliens are pouring into Europe. Nobody's doing anything to change it, to get them out.
This rhetoric has long alarmed human rights organizations. Human Rights Watch warns that Trump's policies exacerbate humanitarian crises, and the Civic Hizmonibar has rated the state of civic freedoms in the U.S. as obstructed, citing threats from the Trump administration. Days ago, ABC indefinitely suspended Jimmy Kimmel's late-night show following his remarks about the killing of Charlie Kirk, which sparked a major backlash from the show's fans and other hosts alike. Tonight, Jimmy Kimmel's late-night show returned to the air.
I posted a message on Instagram on the day he was killed, sending love to his family and asking for compassion, and I meant it, and I still do. Nor was it my intention to blame any specific group for the actions of what it was obviously a deeply disturbed individual. That was really the opposite of the point I was trying to make, but I understand that to some that felt either ill-timed or unclear, or maybe both. And for those who think I did point a finger, I get why you're upset. If the situation was reversed, there's a good chance I'd have felt the same way.
According to Western analysts, Trump's speech and his broader political style are fueling deep polarization not just in America, but across the globe. While his supporters applaud his candor and strength, critics warn that this cocktail of populism, nationalism, and the creation of an enemy figure is eroding democratic institutions and the international order. Ani Hovhannisson, ReOpen Media.
In a sign of continued diplomatic engagement, Armenian Foreign Minister Ararat Mirzoyan and his Azerbaijani counterpart Ceyhun Bayramov met on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York on September 22. The meeting was a direct follow-up to the landmark Washington Peace Summit held on August 8, aimed at building on the results of that conference. According to statements, the ministers exchanged views on potential steps to advance the peace agenda. While no major breakthroughs were announced, both sides agreed to continue the dialogue, signaling a mutual commitment to keeping the negotiation process alive. In a significant moment, the foreign ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan held brief talks Wednesday, facilitated by Marco Rubio during a transatlantic dinner he organized. Armenia's Ararat Mirzoyan and Azerbaijan's Ceyhun Bayramov engaged in a short trilateral contact with Rubio, marking a continued U.S. effort to foster dialogue between the two rival nations. Following the group discussion, Mirzoyan also held a brief private conversation with Marco Rubio, thanking him for the invitation and for creating a platform for communication in this format. The meeting underscores the ongoing high-stakes international push for a lasting peace agreement in the South Caucasus. This high-stakes diplomacy comes as significant humanitarian challenges persist. In a separate meeting with the president of the International Committee of the Red Cross, Mirjana Sporjaric Agri, Minister Mirzoyan raised the urgent issue of Armenian prisoners of war and civilian captives held in Azerbaijan. A key point of discussions was the difficulty of arranging visits to these detainees following the closure of the ICRC's office in Azerbaijan. The hope among the parties is that the fragile peace process solidified at a Washington summit will create the necessary conditions to resolve these pressing humanitarian concerns. The meeting with Bayramov was the centerpiece of a broader diplomatic push by the Armenian foreign minister, who also held a series of meetings with officials from Kazakhstan, Oman, Switzerland, and several other nations during his time in New York. While formal diplomatic channels navigate the fragile peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan, a parallel reality appears to be unfolding on the sidelines. In a carefully curated social media moment, U.S. President Donald Trump and Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev were seen cementing a friendship that has blossomed since the August 8 Washington agreement. In a video shared by Azerbaijan's first Vice President Mehriban Aliyeva, President Aliyev is seen warmly crediting Trump for achieving the impossible. After Trump inquired how long the conflict had lasted, Aliyev responded, more than 30 years, before delivering the striking phrase, "You performed a miracle, Mr. President. Thank you."
That worked out in Armenia and Azerbaijan. I want to thank you, my friend. You are 22 years you said you were there, right? 22 years, and for 22 years you were at war?
Even more. Even
more than that?
More than 30 years.
Wow.
At war. You did a miracle, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you. And I made some friends, so
The exchange casts Trump as the central architect of the recent breakthrough with Armenia, a narrative enthusiastically promoted by Baku. Meanwhile, for some observers, the bar for diplomatic success was set slightly lower. Let us note that during his address to the UN, Trump finally and correctly pronounced the word Armenia. Well, diplomatic victories for Palestine are dominating the headlines at the UN's landmark session. A grim reality check is setting in. A growing chorus of nations is formally recognizing Palestinian statehood, but for the people of Gaza trapped by war and starvation, this declaration do little to stop the suffering. But a second devastating crisis is brewing inside within the UN's own halls. The organization is now facing a catastrophic $500 million budget cut. And the source of this financial bombshell? Reports point directly to one man, Donald Trump. It's now being alleged that since he entered the White House, America's membership fees, the UN's financial lifeblood, have gone unpaid. By the way, US President Donald Trump said that he had engaged in good talks on the topic of Gaza, including with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
We've had some really good talks today on Gaza with both the Middle East representatives and kings and all of the top leaders in the Middle East. And we had also a very good conversation with Bibi Netanyahu, trying to get the hostages back, and we're trying to get the end of the Gaza situation. It's really bad, very bad. And we think it could happen. Maybe it could happen pretty soon. We want the hostages back. We want the bodies back. And we want to have peace in that region. So we had some very good talks.
In a direct exchange with reporters, the 47th U.S. president also made another noteworthy declaration, drawing a firm line on potential Israeli actions in the West Bank. Let me quote, "I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. No, I will not allow it. It's not going to happen." When asked by an off-camera reporter if he had spoken with Netanyahu, "Yeah, but I'm not going to allow it whether I spoke to him or not. I did, but I'm not allowing Israel to annex the West Bank. There has been enough. It's time to stop now."
The European Union has reaffirmed the two-state solution as the only viable path forward for the Gaza conflict during a UN peace conference co-chaired by France and Saudi Arabia.
Le temps est venu.
The time has come. That is why, faithful to my country's historical commitment to peace in the Middle East, to establishing peace between the Israeli and Palestinian peoples, I am announcing that France today recognizes the state of Palestine.
Luxembourg, Malta, Belgium, and Monaco have also recognized Palestine. The U.S. and Israel boycotted the meeting, insisting that such moves undermine the prospect of peace. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas joined the conference by video link, as the United States did not grant visas to members of the Palestinian delegation. Palestine is not yet a full member of the UN.
Hamas will have no role in the governance of Palestine. They're obligated to hand over their weapons to the Palestinian Authority. Our goal is to create a unified state where there will be no armed groups, but only one law and a legitimate security force. We strongly condemn the crimes committed as a result of the occupation. We also condemn the killing and detention of civilians, including the actions carried out by Hamas on October 7, 2023.
Representatives from both Israel and Palestine emphasized that Hamas should not have any authority in either Gaza or Palestine. Despite Israel's boycott over the issue of recognition, its ambassador to the UN told reporters that they are not opposed to such a solution, provided it excludes any presence of Hamas.
Before October 7th, there was a debate about that in Israel. After October 7th, it's off the table. Now we are focused on bringing the hostages. We are focused on eliminating Hamas. And when the day will come that there will be a genuine Palestinian leadership that will condemn terrorism, you're going to hear President Abbas soon. He is paying salaries to terrorists as we speak. When the day will come that there will be genuine leadership, we will speak with the Palestinians. We are a peaceful nation. We signed multiple peace accords, and hopefully we will sign more accords in the near future.
According to many analysts, Hamas has served as a tool for Israel to advance its own political goals. The deep rift between Hamas and Fatah obstructs Palestinian internal unity and weakens the position of the Palestinian leadership in international negotiations.
There is a view that Hamas was created with the tacit approval of the State of Israel, originating from the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt as a charitable organization in the Gaza Strip. The question arises, why would Israel allow Hamas to be created? The logic can be seen as follows. To secure its own reason for existence in the region, that is, to maintain the ideology of struggle, a counterweight is needed. And in the region, the Hamas movement could serve as that very counterweight.
Experts assert that the thesis is considered, even at a scholarly level, that Hamas's actions have indirectly served the interests of the Israeli authorities by strengthening their position. Thus, Hamas's hardline actions effectively fueled Israel's political agenda, justifying its harsh military and political strategy. The two-state solution, reaffirmed by the European Union, offers a viable path to peace, provided the parties show mutual trust and commitment to the diplomatic process. But is lasting peace possible without restoring trust and overcoming the deepening crisis between the two peoples?
It was born from the ashes of World War II, a beacon of hope in a world desperate for peace. In 1945, representatives from 15 nations gathered in San Francisco, united by a single solemn promise: never again. They created the United Nations to prevent the horrors they had just endured. It was a completely different world, built on a dream of global unity. But tonight, that dream is on life support. The United Nations is facing a staggering financial crisis, crippled by a mountain of unpaid dues from its own members. Funds meant for everything from its core budget to critical peacekeeping missions have simply failed to arrive. The consequences are devastating. The UN has been forced to slash spending, freeze hiring, and scale back services at the very moment a chaotic world needs it most. Critics point to a glaring lack of commitment, with powerful nations withholding the lifeblood funds needed to operate. In this new reality, many see an organization that is paralyzed, able to do little more than watch as crises unfold. A haunting question now echoes in its halls. Has the UN become a ghost of its former self, an echo of the ill-fated League of Nations, orphaned by the very powers meant to champion it? The promise of 1945 feels a world away, leaving a globe on edge to wonder if its guardian has lost its power and its purpose. In a world often defined by chaos, let's turn to a story of pure sporting triumph. On the wrestling mat of Zagreb, Croatia, a true champion was forged in the fire of the World Wrestling Championship final. In a stunning display of dominance, he dismantled Olympic champion Naoki Osaka of Japan with a decisive 10-1 victory, securing a premature win and the coveted gold medal. That man is Maha Samoyan, an athlete whose sheer power is matched only by his strength of character. Competing in the 77-kilogram Greco-Roman division, Amoyan has built a legacy of greatness. As a 4-time European champion, now a 2-time world champion, and an Olympic bronze medalist. This latest victory is another shining testament to his incredible will to win. But this was not the only shining moment in this victory match. Rounding out the team's triumphant performance, Arsen Harutsunyan, Slavik Galstyan, and Tracia Pogosyan are also returning to their homeland with bronze medals after waging tenacious battles on the mat.
We have liftoff tonight in Zagreb. We do!
For Armenian wrestling, the 2025 summer-autumn season was a period of mixed emotions, signs of a generational change, and dramatic struggles. From the brilliant performances at the Youth World Championship to the painful defeats and victories of will at the Senior World Championship, these months showed that Armenian wrestling is not only maintaining its position, but also bringing new names to the international mat. While the senior teams were preparing for the main event of the year, the U20 World Championship held in Bulgaria in August became a shining chapter for Armenian wrestling. In the Greco-Roman style, Gaspar Terterian, 72 kilograms, created a real sensation. After claiming victories over representatives from Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Bulgaria, and Greece, Gaspar met the champion of Asia, The success of the youth continued. Yurik Mkhitaryan, 60 kilograms, won a silver medal. And in freestyle, Arman Musukanian, 65 kilograms, earned a bronze medal, bringing another medal to Armenia. The Senior World Championship held in Zagreb, the capital of Croatia, from September 13th, 21, however, began with a setback. In the Greco-Roman 97-kilogram weight class, Armenian sports legend and Olympic champion Artur Alexanian suffered a painful defeat in the quarterfinals to Murad Ahmadiev of Azerbaijan. Alexanian was leading in points, but while executing another role, he ended up on his own back on the mat. Although the match ended with a 3-3 score, the win was awarded to his opponent on criteria, and Alexanian was eliminated from the fight for the gold medal. In the 77-kilogram weight class, Paris Olympic bronze medalist and multiple-time European and world champion Malkas Amoyan shined once again, winning the world champion's gold medal with a superb performance against an Olympic champion. Amoyan later admitted that the slip-up of team captain Alexanian had deeply affected everyone, including himself, but in the next moment, his determination to win was redoubled. Slavik Galstanian, 67 kilograms, also had an impressive performance. In the bronze medal match, while losing 0-5, he displayed incredible willpower and made an impressive comeback, crushing his Kyrgyz opponent with the score of 15-5. In turn, Hratia Pogosian, 60 kilograms, after losing in the round of 16, managed to reach the bronze medal through the repassage bouts. In freestyle, Armenia's only medal was won by team leader Arsen Hadachunian, 57 kilograms, defeating top representatives from Ukraine, Mongolia, and the USA with his brilliant style. Arsen lost to a North Korean wrestler in the semifinals, but secured a confident victory in the bronze medal match, winning a world champion's bronze for the 4th time.
I was in very good shape for this World Championship. I have participated in European and World Championships for many years, but there has never been a year like this one, where I prepared so calmly, was in such good shape, and managed my weight cut so well.
Arsen is confident that the day will come when he wins the title of the strongest on the planet.
I'm not going to get discouraged. I will continue to train with the same intensity and will try to become the champion at the next World Championship.
Head coach of the Armenian freestyle wrestling team, Habet Nakkurginian, highlights several problems in the field.
It's very difficult, really, considering our situation. Let me go back a bit. The state of our youth sports schools. We have a serious problem with coaches, with the number of athletes. Today, if we were to hold a senior Armenian championship with only senior-level athletes participating, we wouldn't be able to do it. You wouldn't even gather 20, 30 people.
The coach also speaks out about financial problems.
We face these kinds of financial problems and have appealed to the ministry and the federation to see how they can cover the shortfall. Because in reality, if you look at our spending in previous years, our budget has remained the same for the past 2 years.
The Armenian teams returned from Zagreb with 4 medals, 1 gold, 3 bronze, proving that regardless of slip-ups and difficulties, the Armenian school of wrestling continues to be one of the strongest in the world.
When used properly, he could become the best player in the world. That was the prescient forecast from his former manager Xavi back in 2021. For years, it felt like a distant dream, a glimpse of unfulfilled potential. But not in Paris, those words became a reality as Ousmane Dembélé, French football's one-time enfant terrible, was crowned the world's best player. At 28 years old, Dembélé is now the golden boy with the golden ball. As he stood on stage thanking his family for their sacrifice, the emotion of his incredible journey became overwhelming. Tears streamed down his face, a round, powerful symbol of the immense heights and crushing lows he has overcome to reach the pinnacle of the sports. This crowning moment was powered by a breathtaking 2024-25 season. Dembélé was simply unstoppable, leading his club Paris Saint-Germain to a historic treble with the Ligue 1, Coupe de France and Champions League titles, before also reaching the final of the Club World Cup. His astonishing tally of 35 goals and 14 assists left no doubt about who reigns supreme. It's a transformation years in the making. Just a year ago, many had written Dembélé off as the ultimate wasted talent. But a shift in mindset, which began during his final years at Barcelona, was fully ignited at PSG, where he was not just signed, but encouraged to embrace his ambition and become the superstar he was always meant to be. Tonight, Ousmane Dembélé is more than just a winner. He is an aspiration. His story is a powerful testament to perseverance, self-belief, and the incredible things that can happen when potential is finally and beautifully unlocked. Blue or the new orange? The slimmer model or perhaps classic white? What if the case doesn't fit? Is the camera really better? Will all my old photos actually transfer? And what if I just don't like the new design? There are just a few of the thousands of questions rolling in our minds. The delightfully agonizing ritual of choosing not just any phone, but the iPhone. From the 14 to the 15, the 16, no, wait, the 17 is already here. Pro Max Air, it's a dizzying lexicon of desire. Is it a chic alternative to Samsung, a glittering display of financial status, or simply a reflection of personal style? Ever since Apple debuted the iPhone in 2007, it has perfected this annual spectacle, wowing the world with new iterations that push the boundaries of design and technology. Fast forward to 2024, and Apple has ushered in a new era with the iPhone 16 and the dawn of Apple intelligence. At its heart is the new A18 chip, the powerhouse hardware purpose-built to handle sophisticated large language models, armed with more system memory and supercharged CPU and GPU cores. But beyond the silicon and software, for the past 2 weeks, the world has been painted a vibrant new color: orange. This is the signature hue of the new iPhone, a device whose insatiable demand and limitless potential, symbolized by that iconic button Apple, have once again captured the global imagination.
Every autumn, the story repeats itself. People queue for hours, sometimes even days, in front of electronics stores. And what for? For this, the iPhone, made by Apple. It's often nearly identical to last year's model. So what makes people desire it so intensely?
No, at first I used Android. I think it was a Motorola or something. It started acting up very quickly. Then a Huawei, and then at some point I switched to the iPhone. I've decided to use this one until the very end, until it's completely unusable. I won't change it.
Right after the first iPhone was released, I got one. It was completely random, purely out of curiosity. And after that, I just got used to it because I think many would agree it's very easy to use.
And when would you want to get the iPhone 17?
In at least a year.
Do you understand the people who, every year when a new iPhone comes out, go and buy the new one?
No, I don't understand them because there are many functions that they don't even use later. For example, people often say, I want the Pro Max. But why a Pro Max? They don't even take photos, they don't do anything, they just use a Pro Max.
And we are calling it iPhone.
For a long time now, Apple's marketers haven't just been selling a phone, they've been selling status. So what does the 17th generation iPhone offer? We toured phone stores trying to find the coveted device. We found one in the electronics shop, but the consultant refused to speak on camera.
Overall, the phone hasn't undergone major changes. It's mainly the camera and the battery that have been updated. Apple has moved away from titanium because titanium is more expensive to produce. But of course, that wasn't the only reason. There were also issues with the color chipping and overheating, so they switched back to aluminum. But it doesn't seem like customers will feel a big difference between the two metals.
So what explains the new iPhone's high price? In the store, we were told it's due to US tax policies, which caused the price to double by the time it reaches Armenia.
I think the price has always been crazy. I feel like the iPhone now is almost like a status symbol. If you got an iPhone, then you got money, so you're showing off. But it's got a very nice camera. I wouldn't mind that, a lovely camera to take nice photos. But other than that, not really, nah.
I think it's definitely expensive, that amount of money for a phone, but that's what the market dictates.
According to media expert Artur Papian, the new iPhone has particularly improved its performance with artificial intelligence.
iPhone Air-ի մասին է խոսում, որը
He's talking about the iPhone Air, which is supposedly very thin. They've also introduced 3 new colors, and strangely, for what I think is the first time I can remember, there is no black iPhone. Instead, we have blue, orange, and gray iPhones. It's expected that in the future, with software updates, these artificial intelligence algorithms will work even better.
The expert offers a more professional breakdown of the differences compared to its predecessor.
If you currently have, for example, an iPhone 15 or 16 in your hand, you probably won't notice a huge difference. But if you have a 13, 11, or say an older iPhone, the difference will be obvious in both speed and software performance.
Papian recalls the 2017 Batterygate scandal, when it was revealed that Apple was artificially slowing down the processors of older models to boost the sales of the new one. Annie Hovaneshan, ReOpen Media.
This much for this week being filmed with ReNews. I'm Sona Tumanyan. Good night.